It's Bernard Ratz. He's going to talk about Pino Mostara, a special monastery or a well-preserved site. Well, I'll ask the question, I guess. Re-evaluating the artistic wealth of private monasteries in medieval Hungary. So, over to you, Bernard. Well, when...
The heat of that, sorry.
Oh, it's good. It's going again. Going again? It's working. Oh, no, it's working.
I mean, it's working. Right?
Yeah.
So, thanks for having me here. I'm very happy to be here and share this research with you all. Private monasteries in medieval Latin Europe were a common phenomenon after the Carolingians and in the High Middle Ages. These were institutions that were founded by an individual for pious purposes and also, importantly, to provide a burial site for him and his immediate family. As the generations passed and the branches multiplied, such sites became important for more people and developed to be political and cultural centers of families. They were present throughout the existence of the medieval Kingdom of Hungary. Here you can see an iconic ruin of a private monastery in Hungary, and also on the right the distribution of some of these in medieval Hungary. Rural private monasteries in Hungary had been previously often interpreted as sites with minimal funding, that often after their initial foundation, when the owner basically gave them money, after that they were rarely surviving and were not given anything, and they were thought to be very neglected. As opposed to this, it seems like that in the Arpadian age, right before the Mongol invasion of 1241, these institutions were thriving, containing outstanding treasuries in Central Europe. Along with this, it is also important to mention that it is not only these private monasteries that were neglected, but also the Middle Ages in the Great Plain of Hungary, which housed many of them. This region is a large geographical area now extending over Hungary, Serbia, and Romania, which therefore needs to achieve a partial reinterpretation regarding the wealth of the Middle Ages. This large fragment of medieval Central Europe is often described as a provincial area, and this problematic understanding in both cases is I think, a serious problem. Both in the case of private monasteries and in the case of the Great Plain in the Middle Ages, and is partly due to our overwhelming reliance on texts. Is this still? No. But can you hear me? Nevertheless, okay. So I'll be a bit louder. So again, part of our overwhelming reliance on texts. Since in this period all the monastic archives were burned and later the royal archives were fragmented during the Ottoman expansion, it is no wonder that these institutions left behind very little trace of their existence, even if they were likely places where documents were produced, as it is visible, for example, from the discovery of the enigmatic but also telling seal matrix of Master Seaton, who, as his name states, must have been somebody who went to university and was probably not even Hungarian, judging by his name, possibly English or Scottish. There are many sites that preserve very little, such as the monastery of Elish, with barely a few fragments of Limoges and Hungarian crosses. And today, this seems to be the characteristic quality of the sites in general. The case of Péter Monostora, which was a completely unknown site until, let's say, 20 years ago, and its excavation started only 14 years ago. This place presents a monastery that was not only extremely rich, rivaling the treasury of French or German bishoprics, but it was also surrounded by a significant proto-urban 11th, 12th, and 13th century settlement. So basically you can see the core, but it extended at a much larger area. So the treasury contain many artworks. Most of these are of very high quality, such as Limoges book covers, Limoges crosses, Rhenish ivory reliquaries, Syrian beaker, and many other pieces that cannot be reconstructed from the fragments. There were also artworks that are now gone forever, but we can presume that they were there due to the general wealth of the site. These would be from easily perishable materials, such as expensive tapestries, of course. So here you can see a couple of cases where like a sense of the original object is given based on the fragments that we have. The red arrows indicate the fragments from the site. a Limoges book cover, an ivory reliquary from Cologne, and a very large Limoges cross, but again, there were many others. The greatest find of the monastery was the Mosen reliquary, which was made in the Meuse Valley. This area, today in the borderlands of Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands, was an important intellectual center where the finest and rarest enamels of the period were produced. The size of these plaques is unique, and it seems that they belong to a large so-called phylactery reliquary based on parallels. It can be reconstructed as such a quadrilobed, very large reliquary, basically 50 centimeters times 50. And what is, however, rather strange is that from the physical appearance of the building, you would not think that it was home to a very high-quality treasury. It started out in a very modest way, and the church was not extended, only the monastic part. But quite significant extensions can be seen on the monastic part in different campaigns over approximately 100 years of the monastery's existence. Here you see the the sixth phase. At the same time, the basilica remained very modest with a length of a mere 22.5 meters and a width of 14.8 meters, very small. As a comparison, the Royal Cistercian foundation of the Holy Cross of Pilis is 57 meters long. This latter, of course, was a very large church in a high medieval East Central European monastic context. The same wealth was probably the case of the nearby monastery of Serres, which was a monastery that also had artworks that were peculiar in their qualities. These were unearthed in the last century. These were column figures, the style and concept of which were quickly arriving at this site from Gothic France. Other sites like Bizerre could be mentioned, where in Central Europe a unique and extremely creative mosaic pavement was discovered. This kind of shows you more southern influences at this monastery. And in the case of Csatád, another private monastery, it is known that the Edmund Bible, an extremely fine piece of manuscript art, was used at this small monastery of one single family. It was made in Salzburg, but it seems to have been used at this private monastery for a long time. What is evident from these examples is that traces of a rich monastic artistic culture fueled by the intellectual connections of monastic patrons and often financed by wealthy families survived, but in all the cases only in fragments, or only one type of extraordinary decoration survived partially. And these are only present in a small fraction of the total number of such monasteries. It is notable, however, that Péter monastery is the most outstanding among all of these, particularly in its metal artifacts. I would argue that this is due to different factors. Among these, firstly, it is possible that Péter monastery was a rich site with a particularly rich noble family, which is actually supported by the fact that members of the patron family were in close relationship with King Béla III. However, I think that this was only a minor factor. A somewhat greater contributor was the fact that the settlement was surveyed by a metal detectorist of the museum from 2012 and was relatively free from illegal looting. And regarding this, it's not on.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, it was surveyed by a metal detectorist, and it was relatively free from illegal looting. Regarding this, it should be specified that this metal detectorist was not only working at the site of the excavations, but was continuously surveying a 2-kilometer area. A significant quantity of the liturgical objects was found dispersed around the settlement and not near the basilica. As a comparative example, as a slight but illustrative tangent, I would like to mention here the work of my colleague István Panya at the Museum of Kecskemét, the institution which was responsible for the excavations of Péter monastery, who has been coordinating community archaeology projects for mostly metal detecting with great success, basically involving many civilians and going out to sites and surveying them. And throughout many years of the surveys, we realized that often high medieval pre-Mongol invasion sites, that is before 1241, have to be surveyed with particular methods. A large radius, which can reach up to 1.5 kilometers from the site, has to be surveyed, of course, with a strong emphasis on the inner. So back to this. From the inner 300 meters. The fragments of the destroyed church equipment and the treasures are usually found scattered around the church, partially as a result of the brutal looting and the destruction of these artworks by the Mongols. This is also valid for treasures, which can come from even 1.5 kilometers from the site, in this case where an entire family was massacred by the Mongols. Thus, returning to the monastery of Peter, actually many of the finds from the church came from outside the excavated area. These were in most cases fragments of crosses that most likely belonged to the monastery. I mean, the finds, of course, these are just general finds extending over really a very large area, much bigger than the one I previously showed you. So therefore, the non-destructive metal detectorist activity at such sites, I would say, is very, very crucial. For example, here I'm showing you a map of the medieval liturgical artworks found in the 8,000 square kilometers of Bács-Kiskun County, and more than half of these were found over the last 10 years with a similar methodology. Regarding the previously mentioned Serre, which had similarly creative fragments from stone, it is important to note that there was no metal detecting survey, and therefore not a single piece of liturgical artwork is known from the site. So another factor that helped to contribute to the preservation of Péter Monostora is the fact that from the early 19th century, the farmers around the area started to use the site as a burial ground, recognizing in the imposing ruins, which they also recycled, a consecrated site. This ensured that the stone quarrying was limited for only the darkest years of communism, and that in this period in the 50s, the site was extensively quarried for the construction of a road. In the image visible here, you can see the brutal excavations for stones, which unfortunately only destroyed part of a chapel and the external area of some of the walls and the entrance, as you can see here where the graves are missing. Therefore, the protection of the site is not clear. While it was protected by a scarce modern cemetery, it was also heavily affected in a short period of the 1950s. This, for example, clearly resulted in the displacement of a fragment that can be interpreted as the back of the main reliquary of Péter Monostora. This was clearly dug out, and probably part of it was taken and built into the road with the stones and soil. And we don't know, it might have been dug out already by the 18th century cemetery, but possibly in the 1950s, where a lot of soil and sand was moved. We are very lucky to have the two enamel plaques that I showed you previously, of what originally may have been 4, and also this fragment that clearly was damaged by this activity in the modern period. Another element to consider regarding the preservation of the wealth of the site is related to the destruction and the clearing of the site soon after the Mongol invasion. There are signs of a battle near the monastery, and it seems that the monastery also resisted the Mongols by adopting what was a very common feature in the Great Plain, a fortified ditch. The inhabitants dug this in a hurry, leaving exposed bodies, as you can see on the image too, and skeletons which were cut through during the digging. This encircled the entire monastery. In the end, the site was taken, and at other settlements, clear traces of sieges can be identified with similar ditches. After it was taken, the Mongols ripped the entire church equipment apart. So basically, they were looking for precious stones, gold, rock crystals, and again, possibly expensive textiles. The rest was smashed to pieces, including the Mosun reliquary. It seems that the Mongols stayed at the site for some time, judging from hundreds of animals that were thrown into the ditch after they had eaten them, and possibly this also affected the survival of the material. The cleaning of the ruins eventually took place, and the entirety of the greater area was devastated, so we don't know exactly when this happened. Basically, all the villages were destroyed, but at some point they started clearing the ruins. At Péter Monostora, the people who cleaned them were actually it seems like that they were actually ritually burying some of the pieces, depositing them in pits. And in some cases, they were less piously thrown into a pit and burned with all the equipment of the church. And it seems that the different forms of depositing also contributed to the survival of a great number of fragments. I would say that this phenomenon, to this extent, is I do not know of any other sites of similar site that has this ritual kind of burying. Nevertheless, it should be emphasized that Péter monastery's reliquary stands out from the other extraordinary finds, and that it shows that yes, such institutions were often wealthy, and compared to their small size, they could be home to unique artworks. Indeed, here we are dealing with the largest Mosen enamels. And I mentioned this is a school named after the Meuse Valley where the highest quality art was produced in the period. And the presence of the fragments of Péter monastery shows that it had objects similar to the finest monasteries of some of the richest in the Holy Roman Empire. Here you see the monastery of Lob with its extraordinary reliquary, the plaques of which are actually much smaller than those of Péter monastery. But one could also mention the even more important monastery of Prüm, which had a similar reliquary, that again was much smaller than that of Péter monastery. The only similarly sized artwork, now destroyed, was in the monastery of Stavlo, which in the 12th century was politically possibly the most important in the empire. Finally, I would like to mention a late medieval example which is connected to another horizon of destruction, the Ottoman. I mentioned this because this is quite instructive about the wealth of a rural private monastery and our perception of it later. During the 15th century, the Ottoman threat intensified, slowly spreading from the southern additional territories of the Kingdom of Hungary to its core areas. But along this line, just 70 kilometers away from Péter monastery, was the monastery of Bát monastery. This site was a Romanesque monastery, annihilated by the Mongols, and then later in the 14th century, an Augustinian monastery. Today, not much is visible, but you can see that apart from the monastery, a fortified mansion was also located here. Here you can see the monastery too, and after several excavations and intense metal detecting activity, we do not have a single find apart from fragments of a common Hansa bowl, which you can also see there later, that can be connected either to the Romanesque or the late medieval monastery. If we look at the late medieval monastery functioning for almost 200 years, we could say that there is nothing. This was a poor institution with possibly some rural things. However, there are documents that are barely known and were never translated from Latin. These describe parts of the treasury. In particular, one of them tells us that the patron family evacuated the treasury due to the Ottoman threat in the first half of the 16th century, and that during the hard and divided, politically unstable times, one part of the family opened the seal chest containing the liturgical equipment to steal the valuables, and lo and behold, we get a glance of what was the poor equipment of the monastic church. A few arm reliquaries made out of silver, crosses, gold, silver, chalices, expensive textiles, and most importantly, two head reliquaries, one with a crown containing precious stones. These two examples that I'm showing you are really fine pieces from the period that were also known during the Middle Ages. And if we did not have this list, we would not know anything again, basically about the site. And only the fragments would indicate that the monastery was there and functioning. So a head reliquary with a crown is clearly not an everyday object. It is, in its description, makes us believe that it was a precious artwork indeed, much like the one preserved in this very city in the National Museum, which is believed to have been made in Buda, the capital of late medieval Hungary. Of course, this was a very fine piece, but in our case, the description specifies that one of the pieces of the monastery was covered in silver and included a crown with gems. I would say that it was a similar artwork. Unfortunately, the saint itself is not specified. While this is a later example, I think it can be applied to several of the earlier ones, even the Romanesque basilica at the same site. If we did not have the Mosen reliquary of Péter monastery, the other monasteries would have been seen in a very different light, as poor and neglected places with occasional and possibly unimportant provincial commissions. Actually, we know that this is not true at all, and partially thanks to the new methodology, we can improve our understanding of these sites, which are fundamentally small rural centers, and see the period and the area in a diverse light, which may provide comparative material for other Central European regions and regions beyond. So returning to Péter Monostorról, so while in the case of Bác Monostor, the evacuation of the well certainly explains why the finds are not there, we can assume that based on the many similar ditches and traces of the invasion, the Mongol invasion unfolded through many of these private monasteries, especially in the Great Plain, in a very similar way. Therefore, I would not think that a rapid destruction would have caused the monastery of Peter to preserve its wealth. Péter Monostor is clearly outstanding even in a Central European and Western context. However, it also shows us that the general quality must have been much higher, and that in general these institutions were not without precious liturgical furnishings, but rather that the looting and the later damage to the sites resulted in many monasteries with very poor quality finds. Péter Monostor was damaged in the modern period, but the modern cemetery was also able to keep for it many of its artworks. In addition, the conscious burial and deposition of the artifacts also contributed to this, even if in many cases we have only a tiny fragment of an artwork. Finally, as mentioned, the methodology in metal detecting surveys involving civilians, community archaeology, also helped to reconstruct its former treasury that is truly rivaling some of these greatest institutions of the period. Thank you very much.
Well, that was another great talk. I really I hope that we've got time for, we're going to have time to pick up some of these things when we do the questions, because I'm quite interested in those Limoges enamels. So, the final paper in... Ooh.
My technical stuff.
So, the final paper in this session, if you like, is from Susanna Wulschnak, and she's going to be talking about counterfeiting. Yes, well, Denari found at this castle, which Jacob says is translated in English as goat's head, so I'm going to go with that rather than try to say the castle name. I'll leave that to you, but I'll just let Jacob do his technical stuff.
Thank you.
And we can begin.
Right. Put it here. Oops. Sorry. You make my technical work harder, Michael.
That's all right.
All right.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Zuzanna Woźniak and study at University of Łódź at the Institute of Archeology. I would like to present to you part of my master thesis. Oh, okay. First, a few words about Koziegłowy archaeological site. Nowadays, Koziegłowy is a small town located in Poland, province of Silesia. Oh, we can see, yeah. Oh. There is early medieval hill fort and medieval castle. The first excavations on the site were started by Włodzimierz Błaszczyk in the 1960s, and then this place was forgotten. First season of archaeological research we started in 2022. In the photos you can see our excavations. On the right you can see Gates Town excavation, and in this place we found the most amount of coins. Okay. Here you can see the excavation plan. Denari were in every trench, but as I said, the most we found in trench 3, Gate Tower, yeah. We have made excavations in several strategic locations, and we mainly looked for architectural relicts. Finding so many Denari was a big surprise. Okay, on this slide you can see the entire research area. The yellow line shows the 1960s excavations. Yeah, this long yellow line. Excavations, the work was managed by an archaeologist, Włodzimierz Błaszczyk. Moreover, you can see probable reconstruction of the castle. Okay, now I talk about the history of Koziegłowy found in historical documents. There are few sources, not too much, unfortunately. It's not known when exactly the town was formed. It's considered that was already functioning in 1382 or 1384. Founder of Koziegłowy was Mściwoj, coat of arms of the fox, son of Mściwoj from Krzelów. However, Mściwoj died in 1385 and left two sons. The younger of the two was Christian I. He inherited Koziegłowy. He was politically active and very committed to development of the town. He had close relations with Władysław Jagiełło, which undoubtedly helped him to develop the town. He died in 1418 or 1419. The next owner of Koziegłowy became his son Christian II. He also had close relations with the king and was just good ruler of Koziegłowy. But from 1435 he was no longer politically active. Probably he was sick, yeah, and in 1437 died. He had many children. He was married twice. After many family arguments, the town was inherited by John the Elder, but he had to pay off his siblings. Furthermore, Christian the II also left some debts. John the Elder couldn't cope with it, and after his death, his son Christian IV sold Koziegłowy in 1519. From the site we took samples for dendrochronological research and radiocarbon dating. This is an interesting, you can see this a sample of wood, for research. This is an interesting point because wood samples are older than we expected. The hill fort probably existed already since the 11th century. Okay, now I will talk about denarii. At our archaeological site, we found more than 600 coins. I researched 450 of them. I have selected the best preserved coins, and over 350 were Jagiellonian denarii. As you can see from the graph, most of them are denarii of Ladisław Varna. It's a gray color, yeah. Okay, this is a typology of the Jagiellonian denarii that I used. Yeah, it's a first type is Ladisław Jagiello type. Second is Ladisław Varna type, and third is Christian the Jagiellonian type, and this structure, crown structure. Yeah. When maybe I said when crown is open, we have type 1, type 2 is closed crown, and this is half open. Okay, why I think these denarii are false? When I cleaned and conserved these coins, I noticed that under the silver plating was a copper core. Originally, denarii should have been made entirely of silver. And then we ask ourselves, if they wanted to save money of coins production, why did they use silver at all? The same effect can be achieved by applying a tin plating. So we did the analysis with an X-ray fluorescence spectrometer. Our suspicions have been partially confirmed. This is a silver plating, but core is copper. this is a silver plating too, but copper core, and this is a tin plating. We can see on graph, and we have interesting situation in this coin because eagle's head looks the other way than it should, but we have just one example. Okay, and we have graphs, and we can see most of silver plating, but we have many with tin plating. Okay. When the falsification of denarii at Koziegowy Castle began, I think the children of Christian II started it. After 1435, when he was sick and old, I remind he died in 1437. In 1434, Ladislaus Varna became king of Poland, and we can see here we have many, the most denarii of Ladislaus Varna. Okay, he ruled until 1444. At the time, the owners of Koziegowy had a large debt. Moreover, most of the coins we found were denarii, like I said, of Ladislaus Varna. And I should like to add, in second season in 2023, we found more than 2,000 denarii. We are researching them now, yeah. And for examples, and even though we haven't found yet mint master's tools, probably counterfeit denarii in the castle, of course, we intend to continue our work in Koziegowy in the next seasons. Bibliography, and thank you.
Lovely, thank you. So we've kept well to time, so we've got about 20 minutes now for a discussion, and then we've got a special announcement after that. Over to you. Who wants to start with the questions? poznaje.
Technical thing, and I can start. Okay. I would like to invite here Kasper Siejkowski from Jagiellonian University to present his paper on musical instruments from the 10th to the 15th century in Polish archaeological collection in line with the latest research. And we have to put it in here.
Good morning, my name is Kasper Siejkowski, and I will talk about musical instruments that were discovered during archaeological excavation in the territory of Poland dating back to the 10th to 15th century. I would like to talk about my research on medieval instruments from the area of Poland. I will begin to discussing who deals with music in archaeology and what materials musical instruments were made of in the Middle Ages, and I will characterize group of instruments divided according to Kurt Sachs classification, which I will discuss during the presentation. The scientific discipline dealing with musical instruments, sound, tools, and music in archaeology is archaeomusicology. In the broadest sense, the archaeology of music is the study of the phenomenon of past musical behaviors and sounds. Music archaeologists use methods from both musicology and archaeology. Another important discipline helpful in our research is ethnography. Certain forms of instruments found by archaeologists were used in the 19th century or are still used today by traditional societies around the world. Assistance in their discovery and searching for similarities allow for their classification, followed by the technological process and method of play. The necessity of researching medieval instruments in Poland was pointed out as early 1949 by Professor Kostrzewski. He noticed that archaeology provides such a large number of musical instruments, allowing for the reconstruction of musical culture in the territory of present-day Poland from the 12th century onward. Classification in the research on medieval musical instruments. Classification is very important. The basic of that remain relevant is the Hornbostel-Sachs classification. This is musicology classification. It is a system of dividing musical instruments according to the extraction of sound, source of sound. There are four basic groups in the classification: chordophones, aerophones, idiophones, and membranophones. Musical instruments and sound tools are quite rare in our time.
this is due to the materials from which they were made. The main materials include wood, bone, less frequently antler, ceramics, or metal. The first group is chordophones, all kinds of wooden stringed instruments. They can be divided in terms of shape and sound extraction into Northern European lyra with a window allowing cithars, psalteries, guitars, lutes, and bowed instruments, rebec and fiddles. Chordophone belongs to a unique and very rarely encountered group of musical found at archaeological sites in Europe. Poland belongs to the countries where the largest number has been found. They occur in two variants, plucked and bowed. First instruments is lyra from Gdańsk. The first chordophones found in Polish land in 1949. It is dated to the 13th century. It was excavated in the area of former stronghold in the layers of fisherman hut. It is analogous to the lyras found in Novgorod the Great in Russia. Next instrument is lyra from Ostrówek in Opole. It is 10th century Northern European lyra with a window. This is window. The instrument was excavated in early medieval layers in Ostrów in Opole in the remains of a residential building. During my bachelor work, I reconstruct these instruments. The experiment involved obtaining materials, processing, making strings, and examining the possibilities of playing. I have shown that it was a small size strings instrument with strings made of horsehair. A second similar lyra was also found in Ostrówek in Opole, dating back to the beginning of the 12th century. It was made of one piece of linden wood. Next instrument is very rarely guitar. Guitar is the protoplast of lute, medieval lute. Oblong guitar is an instrument found in its entirety in the latrine, in the remains of bourgeois plots dating from to the 15th century. This is this instrument. Next part of instruments, parts of chordophones, is parts of nickel harpa from Volin. Belongs to the only known archaeological specimen. It was a strings instrument whose strings were shortened by a wooden tangent, similar to the hurdy-gurdy. This is a reconstruction of this instrument performed by Stanisław Mazurek. This is this part and reconstruction. Next group is aerophones. The most commonly found musical instruments during archaeological excavation are aerophones. Aerophones are the subject of my doctoral work. I divided them into 14 groups. The most exceptional is one-handed bone flutes with finger holes, decorated early medieval ones from Kowalewo and Międzyrzecz. This type of instruments is the unique in Europe. These artifacts are the only decorated aerophones in Poland and have no counterparts throughout Europe. In the territory of England, Helen Leaf found several adorned aerophones, but they were individual pieces on this ornamentation. Researchers dated them. 3 holes, undecorated ones from Wrocław, this is it, and Grodziszcze, as well as analogies to each other, with 3 upper holes, one and one lower from Bardo Castle in Lower Silesia, and from the old town in Endlong, dating from to 13th century. An enigmatic group of bone pipe without finger holes. There is a hypothesis that these were elements of pan pipe. In ethnographic sources from Russia and Ukraine, we found bone pipe, one with which playing does not require the connection. I experiment with Wrocław artifact from Ostrów Tumski. The sounds can only be extracted from only one side. Whistles and calls from the site of Grodzisko na Łąkach of Wiślica. The item has an ornamentation in the shape of a bird head. Probably they could also be waterfall calls. Bone hexes are found in large number in early medieval archaeological sites. There is an idea that they were objects reused as sound tools. The conception of rotating cubes, according Kajsa, Lund, Malinowski and Moszeński. Wooden one-handed flutes. There are many representations of this type of instrument in iconography. A musician plays the flute with one hand and the drum with the other. Wooden flutes, the most development in terms of the form of musical instruments from this group. They have 8 finger holes, 7 upper and 1 lower. In the case of the oblong flutes, the instrument's creator threw of left-handed people. Therefore, the last hole is double. The musician plucked one of them, probably with wax. And this is these instruments. Next group is trumpet mouthpieces from wooden. This form of mouthpieces is known from ethnography. They are used to play wooden trumpet. In Scandinavia, there are trumpet finds, but without mouthpieces. We have mouthpieces without trumpet in Poland. In the photo, we see a trumpeter from Ciechanowiec who is still building and play wooden trumpet to this day. It's very similar mouthpieces, exemplar. And horn and bone trumpet mouthpieces, made of late medieval cattle bones from Puck, this, and early medieval from Wolin, found during excavation in one of the graves. This exemplar probably is not mouthpieces, but probably has been. The researcher don't know. Next group is metal trumpet. First from Malbork, an instrument made in Germany without any elaboration. Initially, it was true to be a Roman litus, dredged from the river in Malbork. The trumpet from Koszalin disappeared during the war. It is known from a drawing and belongs to the urban trumpet. And the last group of aerophone is the lead whistle pilgrims from Gdańsk. Interestingly, they were customarily used alongside bells whose frequency was above the human hearing threshold. Next group is idiophones and membranophones. Idiophones include instruments such Jew harp, rattles, bells, etc. And membranophones include all drums. Neolithic ceramic drums are most commonly found. Finds of medieval drums are very rare. It is known from iconographic and historiographic sources that they were present in the life of medieval communities, but were made of wood, which prevented this type of musical instrument from surviving to the present day. This is all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for this interesting paper. I'll do my technical things and invite next speakers. Okay, I would like to invite, well, for archaeological conferences, paper with so many people and titles as being part of it, it's like quite unusual. But colleagues are from the University of Technology, so I think it's like a usual way. So I'd like to invite Rafał Wrocławski and Agnieszkę from the Warsaw University to present the paper with all the list of other participants. So that I want to mention them. I hope they will give me for that. So Barbaros in view. Material science in archaeology, microphone. I have you asked to sit suddenly because of the stream. Yes, but you can. Yes, you're talking to me. You can stand. But more in front. I will make the camera catch you. It's fine for you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. My question regarding cutting the coin was obviously inspired by our presentation. And we are not only making materials at our faculty, we are also making things of those materials, but usually we are destroying things and destroying materials. So that's why we called ourselves barbarians in museum. So we represent the Warsaw University of Technology in the Faculty of Material Science and Engineering, and together with all those people that we are really, really grateful for their contribution and cooperation, we are working on archaeological artifacts and examining them from the material scientific point of view. Okay, so I now will pass the microphone to my colleague, who is an expert in not only materials, but in some phenomena called corrosion.
Thank you. Hello. We will start with no cutting archaeological objects because we don't want to scare you. I will start with our experiment. As we know, brass is an alloy of copper and zinc, and bronze is an alloy of copper, but with addition of tin and other metals. So, as you see, you can divide them by colors. Yeah, it's for materials engineers. It's not so hard. Okay, so we produced with my colleague from Jagiellonian University some samples. We melt elements, and we produced more than 4, but I will show you 4 type of samples. And it was cylinders with diameter of 20 millimeters and height of 3-4 millimeters, and we cut it in half. 9 years ago, we put these samples in our aerated aqueous solutions, because it's only one solution today I will show you. This solution was trying to imitate soil. So we have sulfuric acid and hydrochloric acid, And we stayed, and we stay these samples in this environment for 5 years. Experiment goes on because we have 3 samples, so I have also another samples too, and I will take it from the solution next year or maybe in this year. Okay. So I will not show you the chemical composition. What we saw after 5 years of on the samples, we know that here we have, I'm sure, copper, some corrosion products of copper, because we have green color on the surface, and here we have zinc. So we know something. So we start with sample 1, and before placing material in the environment, we do some X-ray diffractions. We want to know which phases we have in our sample. So in first sample, we have bronze, and it's okay because we put copper and tin and melt them together. But what about 5 years later, on the same sample? You see that on corrosion products, there is no tin. You see only copper oxides and this type of compound. And the phase composition is also different from it was earlier. But definitely it's bronze. What about the second sample? As you see, we have brass. And it's okay because we put copper and zinc. After 5 years, we have zinc. We saw the white corrosion products on the surface, so we know it's zinc oxide, and XRD show us that, okay, it's zinc oxide. But the phase composition, it's also different. What about our sample 3? XRD examinations show us it's brass, but there is also tin. The tin element could not produce any phase in our material. After 5 years, we have copper and tin on the surface, but we don't have any zinc compounds. So it's definitely bronze. And also this weird phases of copper and tin, it's also presented here. But there is no zinc on the corrosion products. What about sample 4? It's bronze. It's bronze, but as you see, there is no zinc in the phase composition. We have zinc, tin, and lead. And it's only compounds of phases of copper, tin, and copper lead. After 5 years in environment, we have only one type of copper oxide on the surface, and there is also no zinc present in the material. So, to summarize it up, it's a bronze, it's a copper, no, it's a brass. You have to remember that the chemical or phase composition of corrosion products may not correspond to what you have inside it. So if you examine your object only looking what you have in your corrosion products, you may do not know what you have inside. Also, if you remove your corrosion products, you also have chemical or phase composition that it's not corresponded to the original material which is inside. So please try to examine also the not only surface but also deep inside. So another example of our examinations. It's near Lida in 2022. There were found some gold, silver, and gold-silver artifacts, and as we could think, it's amalgam, not plating, but amalgam. So as we know, amalgam is the mercury, sorry, mercury and another element. So we do the EDS examinations, energy descriptive spectroscopy, in these gold places. So as you see, it's nothing weird here. We have gold on the top and silver beneath the gold. There is no mercury. What about another, in the other place, on the same lion, near this place, we do the examination. And here you have mostly silver and mercury, but we don't have gold. And you see the gold color. So look at these two spectra. They are on here. This spectra, it's first when you have gold, and here you have mercury. As you see, gold and mercury have the peaks on the same place. And second peak. So my colleague Aleksandra Rzeszotarska-Nowakiewicz do in the Jagiellonian University XRF measurements, and with one spectrometer you see that it's gold and mercury, but as you see, this line is also one on the another. So this percentage is not so good because they put in they have coincidence one with another. So she do another experiments with another spectrometer, and here you could see that they are so close. But in the spectrometer, you could divide them. So to summarize it, you have to learn how the material tests are performed, how the physical basis, which physical bases are in your methods of examinations, and you have to be aware of the limitations. You can't divide gold and then mercury in EDS spectra, and please don't use only one method. And my last example, it's from Obranova treasure, and as you see, you have so small, it's 1 centimeter, so small spheres here. And as you see, accidentally, one of the granule fell off, and we do the EDS examinations. As you see in these 2 points, it's and in the one place you see only silver and copper, but here you have so much elements because near in one place you see the metal of the granula. Here you can see the solder of the which was used to produce this ornament. So it's so close one to another, as you see. Another example from this same treasure: the granulas fell off, and here you see the copper, there is more copper in this place, so it could be the solder. Also, in this place, you see the copper, more copper on these places where granula was soldered. So, to summarize it, please don't do the conservation. Let us examine your artifacts, and sometimes let us detach something or cut something, because we have to see what's beneath the surface. Okay? So, about technology, Rafa will be talking.
I will be even more brutal than Agnieszka, because what I usually start with, I'm just cutting the objects or the artifacts. So the chemical and phase composition, like you could see here, it's crucial for knowing what you have in your objects, in your artifacts. But the way the elements are distributed is crucial for knowing what is the manufacturing process or technology or identification. Yeah. So there was a question whether the coin was cast or struck. Yeah. We can give the answer. After you let us cut the coin. So we can observe the microstructure that might be different on the surface or close to the surface, and it might be quite different in the core of the objects that we are examining. So it's easily be misidentified, the microstructure and possible manufacturing process, but by just observing surface layers or close to the surface. Even if you cut the nail in a wrong direction, like you could cut the nail that was found in Puszcza Białowieska, it's the northeastern part of Poland, and it was a master thesis of one of my students 6 years ago. So if you cut the nail here and you will look this cross section, you will have a uniaxial grains, and it tells you nothing about the way the nail was made. Of course, we know that nails are usually forged, but we can see the real clear evidence of those, say, lamellas or lines of the plastic deformation here. Yeah? And you can see here that it's the transition from the shaft into the head of the nail, and you can see here clearly the plastic deformation. So that's why we were allowed to cut such an object here. So, for example, another thing that was already mentioned, arrowheads. Yeah? How do you make arrowheads? Like nowadays, like you do the sport bow shooting, you will just turn them on lathe, yeah, and they are made out of rods. But usually they were also forged. And how do you forge, like, maybe one fancy arrowhead? It takes some time and a skilled craftsman. But when you have to do hundreds of them, you just cut the rod, place it in a fire pit, and you let it for hours maybe, yeah. And you will see that the microstructure will differ in terms of just forging a knife or not a flint but a steel for making a fire, yeah. And if you intend to use such arrowheads, and usually when you are trying to hunt a boar or elk in the woods and you miss the animal, you will mainly lose the arrow. So you don't have to put too much effort in making such an arrowhead. So you can just make it not that hard, usually not quench, just hard enough to punch through the skin. Yeah. So tell me, which one is real artifact from the, say, 15th century, and which one is made nowadays but using the traditional technique? Can you distinguish? No, you can't, because they are done in the same way. So the blacksmith nowadays is also cutting a rod. It's putting bunch of those rods in a fire pit, and and they last in a fire, and they take he takes one by one and forge another and another arrowhead. Yeah. So you can see here that we call a so-called a feather-like ferrite grains. Yeah, that we call a Wigmanstetten structure, a microstructure that is very, very distinctive for the overheated steel. So the steel that was heated too long, actually. So in terms of mechanical properties, it's very bad. But in terms of just shooting just once somewhere and hitting something, it's good enough. Yeah. So once again, you can see here that we've got pretty similar microstructures. Yeah. And in terms of using different techniques, so especially on the left-hand side, you can't distinguish the ferrite, so say pure iron, from the perlitic microstructure, which is a microstructure of this iron and iron carbide cementite. Yeah? But if you use the polarized light, here you can see the opalization here, and these are the places where the perlitic structure is placed. Yeah? So that's another technique that you might use to identify and describe the objects. And the last thing, the coin. This one is a silver one, say 13th century Arabic, but found in West Pomerania, and we have had them enough to cut them. Yeah. So you can see here that when it is observed in profilometer, like it's in very bad condition. Yeah, like you can hardly distinguish whether it's reverse or obverse or whatever, and you can't see the, what's the proper word in English? I don't know, yeah. Okay, so when you cut those coins, you can see here also the plastic deformation lines. Yeah, the grains are elongated because they are struck. They are actually forged in terms of material science. Yeah, so you can see here the plastic flow of the material during the forging. And you can see here a zoomed in microstructure. You can see the edges of those coins here. And you can see here that they, when they are struck, they touch the outer cylinder and they have to go up and down. Yeah. The same on the another rim, but you can see here that it was raised against the wall of the cylinder and then it was, say, folded somehow. Yeah, but it's I can imagine how it was made. However, I can't imagine really how this part of the relief of the coin was made. So when I would design the process of making such things, I would divide it into two steps or two stages. I would use a chisel or a kind of a tool just to raise the material and then bend it once again. So we don't know actually how it was made, if the minting process was made, divided into stages or not. Yeah? So that's another thing, very, very interesting for not only for you as archaeologists, but also for us as engineers, how those coins could be made. Yeah? And another thing, that's a complete mystery. That's a kind of a hole, yeah, because there are two parts of the coin, and they were like intact, but you can see here also the plastic deformation lines, that they were just punching against each other. Yeah? And pin, made out of bronze, found in the Masław, so it's Silesia, closed here. Cast, forged, heat treated, like you can see here different colors, like this one is more copper-ish, this one is maybe bronzish or brassish, we don't know, yeah? Then we have to ask Agnieszka. And when you take a closer look and you etch the cross-section, you could see here that we've got some pores here, and the main pore is placed in the center of the core of this pin. So it might give us some clue, as for material scientists, that it might be cast, because when things are cast, they shrink, of course, and they form such voids, usually in the middle of the mold. Yeah. So when we take a closer look, we can see here that it's more or less pure copper. We have a brass or bronze-like grains made out of alloy of the copper and lead, zinc, tin, sometimes arsenic, yeah. And what you can see here, that two very, very characteristic things. The thin grayish layer of lead, which solidifies very, very last because of the low melting point. And you can see here two parallel lines inside of those grains. We call them twins or twin boundaries. And they are very, very characteristic for copper-based alloys after plastic deformation and a heat treatment that we call recrystallization. But we don't know whether this pin was forged, then a little bit, cast, then forged a little bit, and in terms of regaining some plasticity or ductility, whether it was heat treated intentionally or it was heat treated during some burial in fire or just fire in some disaster, we don't know that. But we can trace the technology history of such an object based on the microstructure. So we thank you very much for your attention, and do not hesitate to email us and send your objects. We'll cut them, examine them, we'll invite you for a coffee and doing the examination with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh no, technology, sorry. Thank you for this very interesting and inspiring lecture, especially for me. When it comes to this metal thing, it's like always accompanying discussion, we have still some time later. We got out guys for we do it for the conference, but still have discussion. So please, any questions, any remarks? If I may, then I start to Kasper. Okay, Kasper, I'm intrigued you were talking about that last time or another, but I want to ask you, you are considering metal parts of the instrument in your research, and you know that they are not very like counting on the number of things, but there are like metal parts of the turn the street. The only knowledge are cool. I
we look a lot of one more just further. Consider like the rifle or the belt of life. For they like very small belt, also because you show very formal things on views to what I about there's some kind of diachronic confession you can see in the development instrument, which also can show the music display. I can imagine some real work that that surgery was completely different. See how it develops. And we consider unmanifold wooden instruments, wooden alarms, made only one other. Yes, and it is very simple form. And when late medical forms structural forms, 8 finger forms, the type of instruments analogous in Western Europe. We observe a lot of
I'm interested in social role of musicians. You know, are they professionals? Are there any musical instruments that people have to be professionals, like those expensive ones? And what
very important part of culture. It's a lot of iconography sources where music, musician play in castle, in other street of medical this instrument is a group of instruments who were made only bourgeois. When we get from Elno, it's a very good artifact. Head of instrument, head of woman, and very precisely well. Any more questions?
I'm both you already done some analysis about what type of bones I saw sometimes, or I recognize sometimes you have done analysis about the person about these bones, and
And this type of instrument was also done with some other type of drones or only with
I have a question for you. Thank you very much for your talk. It was a very excellent reminder of the pitfalls of trusting other people to how to do their But my question was, well, really, the problem is my colleagues who work in museums often regard us archaeologists as awful enough barbarians. Without the risk of chopping things into pieces. And so the question was whether you foresee any emerging methods or methods which are either minimally invasive or not at all invasive in order to look at some of these problems.
So, yeah, I would suggest maybe X-ray tomography, but it's definitely not going to give us all the information that might just make it destructive methods. You can use many non-destructive methods, like ultrasonic contamination, like X-ray tomography, and so on, but you will never see the dendritic grains. You will not cut the really impossible. So when you have one object, I can understand that you are trying to preserve them. But if you have tens of thousands of them, like, why not spend those few to get better knowledge and understanding? That's crucial.